job, but she also owns Burton Leadership Solutions. She is an executive director, certified speaker, trainer, and coach for John Maxwell. I don't know if you guys realize how big of a deal it is to have a John Maxwell speaker with us, but it's a huge deal. So thank you, Helen. Helen feels that most of her success in business and her personal life comes from initiating relationships, and I 100% agree with that. She has initiated those relationships with the right people and strengthened them by using good people skills, which is what she's going to help teach you today. John Maxwell has a new book out called Winning with People. It goes over the basic principles for building a good relationship with others that work every time, and she's going to speak on that specifically. Helen is one of the fastest and most talented people I know. You're lucky to have her here. I don't know why she's friends with me. Y'all enjoy. Thank you.
Wow, it is my pleasure to be here and talk about an amazing event. It's right in Amarillo, Texas. It would not have happened without Gina and Amy Henderson. So let's give them when we put an event like this together, it takes a lot of people behind the scenes, and I was blessed to be a part of that. So just being able to see it all come together has been amazing. So as Gina said, my name's Helen Burton. I'm a small business owner, and I have been part of I've been following John Maxwell. Can I see a show of hands? Who knows who John Maxwell is? A lot of people. It's crazy because a lot of people have no idea who he is. And I usually say, he's the godfather of leadership. Like, you even know who John Maxwell is, right? And so I've been reading his material for about 20 years. And the reason I chose John, there's a lot of people out there, right? But the reason I chose John was because he was a pastor first and foremost. And as a person of faith, I knew that as a small business owner developing teams, that I needed to have the right curriculum. I needed to have the right foundation to be able to develop leaders. Not just develop leaders, but develop myself, right? And so John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing less, nothing more, nothing less. And so what exactly does that mean? When we take a look at our lives and look to see what influence we have, then we're able to have an awareness. And so I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about a couple of John's books, Winning with People. This is the one that Gina mentioned. And of course, this is one of my favorites because today does matter. So many times we focus on yesterday, we focus on tomorrow, and it's about being intentional with today, right? I think you guys would agree. The majority of issues that we deal with in today's workplace, just in society as a whole, have to do with people, right? People. Some people, years ago, when I first became a business owner, I was young, in my early 30s, and I just remember going, oh my God, how am I going to deal with some of these people? And as a person of faith, God had to remind me, these people were created in my image. So I had to look through a different lens and begin to identify and to begin to see people in a different light. So some of the situations that we deal with, first and foremost, is communication. That's the number one issue. Wouldn't you guys agree? Usually there's a miscommunication. And so it's having an awareness of understanding that our thought processes, who we become, basically goes back to our paradigms, our upbringing. And so we absolutely have to have an open mind. We have to have an open mind. We have to be teachable. And so I made a decision to become a lifelong learner. Not only did I make a decision to invest in my personal growth, but I also made a decision to invest in others. And so my passion comes from watching people become the best version of themselves. So 4 years ago, I actually became an executive director for John Maxwell. I am a firm believer that we have to absolutely have a coach, a mentor. One of John's laws says you cannot grow. It's the law of the lid. You have to constantly be growing yourself. You constantly have to be growing yourself in order to become a better version of yourself. And so also one of my passions is traveling international. So I get to travel with John Maxwell. I was in Paraguay last year. The year before that, I was actually in Africa for a month. And I'll be in Israel in about 9 days. So I love to be part of global transformation. I also serve as the president of the Bridge. Who's familiar with the Bridge here? Yay! So the Bridge does amazing things, don't they? And so my passion comes from seeing women, young girls that have been sexually abused, and so I made a decision to become a voice for those women. And there's so much that we can do to advocate. So I always have to plug and say, I encourage everybody to step out. You know, sometimes we have to be uncomfortable. Actually, not sometimes. We have to make a decision to be uncomfortable in order to move forward. So also, as part of that, I am a part of international ministry. So, you know, my goal is to really transform globally, not just in Amarillo, but it starts with the people at home. And it starts with the people in our circles, in our sphere of influence. So as a small business owner, I know the challenges that people face, and usually it's people. So that's one of the reasons I chose winning with people. You know, I want to focus on the most critical element, and that's recognizing what we can do to change those challenges. You know, I had a conversation with one of my teammates yesterday, and she said, I'm dealing with a lot of difficult people. How do I deal with difficult people? You know, and so these are just some effective ways of being able to deal with difficult people. So, you know, one of the things that I'm often reminded is if we change our actions, our results are going to change. You know, it's a reality. When you look in the mirror and you identify things about yourself, awareness is the first step. With awareness comes options. And so it is extremely critical to understand, you know, we're so accustomed, our society is so accustomed at pointing the finger. And there's always a finger pointing back. I think you guys have heard that, but it's a reality. And so John has written so many books about handling different situations, and the 21 Irrefutable Laws was the first book that I was introduced to. And if you don't know who John is, I would encourage you to, there's so much content available online that's complimentary. So I would encourage you guys to really take a look at his material and use it to be able to develop yourself. So, you know, life is full of surprises. I think you guys would agree. How many business owners do we have in this room? Wow, that's amazing. So life is full of surprises. So the question is, how do we react to those surprises? How do we react to those surprises? Because we're accustomed to it's a fight for territory. We all want to be right. And so when we begin to lose that right to want to be right, you chuckle, right? Yeah, we do. We do. And so when we give up the right to want to be right, our situations are going to change. The way we think is going to change. And that's the beginning of transformation. It's really that simple. You just have to have an awareness. So the best leaders, they practice flexibility, knowing that, you know what, your plan A is not always going to pan out. It's not always going to work. So let's have a plan B, possibly even a plan C. So I think you guys would agree, as business owners, we have to have flexibility, correct? I've heard people say we have to be fluid, you know, because it doesn't always work out. And as a business owner, when I first started as a business owner, I had the perception that I had to know this and this and this. And what it all boiled down to, it was about partnering with the right individuals. It was about identifying what my strengths were and saying, I need you on my team. So I am very strategic about who I bring on my team, because I want to make sure that it's a well-rounded team. And not only do I develop teams, but I also develop my leaders' teams and assist them in developing their teams. There was a time when, if you had a pulse, I brought you in. That didn't work very well, but that's okay, because through that, I learned. And so John Maxwell wrote a book called Failing Forward. You've read it. Isn't it a great book? I think everybody needs to read that book. Because we look at failures, we look at our failures, and we're so self-critical. We're so hard on ourselves. But when we take time to evaluate, which is the key element, is taking time to evaluate what worked, what didn't work, making the necessary changes, this is where we learn. This is where we gain the appreciation as hard as it is, and if you have children, you know what I'm talking about, right? Because we do things different with the second child, and then the third child. And then when we become pros, we have no more kids, right? That's when grandparents. So it is about having that awareness, making the necessary changes, and having just a routine. I get asked this a lot. How do you do everything that you do, Helen? We all have the same time in the day, and I prioritize. First thing I do when I get up in the morning, I'm an early morning person, so I get up about 4:15, 4:30, and I read my Bible. I get in the Word, because I know that that's the foundation of my day. And so that's what I do. I journal. I'm a big journaler. And if you're not a journaler, I encourage you guys, I don't even know if that's a word, a journaler, but if you're not, I encourage you to become one. Because it's given me the awareness to go back to the different seasons in my life and to recognize the seasons that I was going through. Because we all go through seasons, especially when you're building a business and you're dealing with the challenges of building a business. And so it's given me really the understanding of what I was going through at that time, and to be able to, more than anything, to be able to help my insurance agents, because I have an insurance agency. So to be able to help my agents to handle those situations. So it's been very, very instrumental in my life. So I do encourage that you journal. So, wouldn't you guys agree that attitude is huge? Attitude is huge. So, I went to Paraguay with John Maxwell, and I was so excited. It was 50 coaches. I was one of 50, very excited. We were given instructions on who we were going to meet with. I was going to go to the TV station, meet with some of the high officials, attorneys, very excited. So I get to the hotel, and I have this thing about having to unpack my bags immediately, hang my clothes, right? They may not have an iron in Paraguay, and I'm thinking I got to get my clothes hung. So I pull my clothes and my jewelry, and all my jewelry was gone. It had been stolen. So somewhere in transit, all of my jewelry was stolen, and I was not happy because I had bought some Kendra Scotts. Is a Kendra Scott fan in here? Yeah, I mean they're not cheap, are they? So I had about 4 sets of Kendra Scott. I had my pearls. I had some of the best stuff. And so I sat on my bed, and I had about 30 minutes to get to my training, and I thought, I have a choice here. I could either get really upset, and start calling the insurance and focusing on that, or I could be intentional in the moment and really embrace why I'm here, set it aside, and deal with it later. And that's the decision that I decided to do, and the outcome was so much better than had I not been there to do what I had been called to do. So then I go into the training room, and I love this story because it really touches about attitude and the choices that we have in life. So I go to the training room, and the 2 words that I had to teach on were attitude and forgiveness. Yeah, that's what I would call a God incident, not a coincidence, right? And so I was like, okay, Lord, I hear you loud and clear. Jewelry can be replaced. So I just encourage you to, find the stories where you actually had your personal stories, where you actually have a choice to turn that around. And it really does make a difference in our lives. So I want to talk about the law of the big picture. There's so many laws in John's book, Winning with People, but I selected just a couple that I really felt were appropriate, especially when you're building a business, when you've had a business, when you're transitioning in life, when you have, and we all are going through those things. So basically the law of the big picture says people do what people see. People do what people see. When leaders show the way with the right actions, their followers copy them and succeed. How true is that? When you look at your children, and we hear that a lot, I've become my mother. Right? And so, but people are going to do what people see. So, the important thing is you've got to, simultaneously be visionaries without losing sight. And that is critical. So how do you effectively do that? by taking time. I think this is one of the biggest challenges that us as mothers, as wives, as business owners, women of, well, how did you target this morning? That was so beautiful. You said we're women of everything. We do everything.
Oh, yeah, we're every woman.
We're every woman. I love that. I wrote that down. We're every woman. And so how do we effectively do that? You've got to take time to think things through. You've got to take time to evaluate what's working, what's not, what's effective, what's not. Look at your circle. You look at your circle. Are my friends, is my sphere of influence helping me, or are they hurting me? You've got to take and make some really tough decisions. Decisions that are hard, but leadership is hard, isn't it? We have to have hard conversations. We have to make decisions that are going to serve us. And something that served us 10 years ago doesn't necessarily mean it's going to serve us today. So it is so critical that you take the time to do that. And that's exactly what the law of the picture is about. How do you make this work? By developing those around you, by identifying where you can help them. We have this perception of thinking everybody's on our page, and that is not the case. Everybody comes from different backgrounds, different cultures. On that same trip in Paraguay, I was just sharing with Amy earlier, I said, it was fascinating to be on stage with John Maxwell. And at the end of every conference, he always does a subtle altar call. And he'll say, one question that he always asks, and if you know of John Maxwell, then he's really big on saying, who do you know that I need to know? Who do you know that I need to know? And I want you to really begin to ask that question to some of the people that you know, because that may be the very answer that you need. That may be the very person that you've been praying for that's going to, catapult your business and take it to the next level. So he says, who do you know that I need to know? And so while in Paraguay, he's on stage, there's 10,000 people, I'm standing right beside him. It's a surreal moment, I'm very excited. And he says, I know exactly who you need to know that I know, and that's Jesus Christ. So I thought, wow, how cool that he could do that. So that's a highlight of my life. But the law of the big picture can make or break a business. It can truly make or break a business. No employee wants to work for a boss that they can't respect and they can't emulate. So you've got to lead from the front. You've got to lead from the front, especially when you don't feel like it. Because at times you don't feel like it, especially when you're dealing with, when I first went into business, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have a finance degree. Oh my God, I'm not this marketing guru. I don't know what I'm supposed to do there. I don't know. So I'm looking at all of these different areas going, I don't have what it takes. But now I look back and say, I didn't need to have that. Because Amy's my anchor and she's phenomenal. I have a CPA who handles my books. And so I don't have to know the books. There's certain areas that I don't have to know. The important thing is to identify your strengths. Figure out what you're good at. And that's what you want to focus on. Instead of looking at what your weaknesses are, which is what we tend to do. We are so self-judgment is huge. And there's that constant voice in our head, right? So the goal is to quiet that voice. And really celebrate the small successes. As business owners, we're entrepreneurs. So many people come to our country to take advantage of capitalism, right? And we're actually doing that. So kudos to you for doing that. That's phenomenal. So I know my time is running out, and I have so much more to say. So what does it take to win with people? What does it take? Good relationships are the foundation of everything. Everything. And I think we can just stop and think about the good foundation, the good relationships in your life. We all have them. And then the not so good. Unfortunately, toxicity is like cancer. It tends to spread. And it can really, infect the entire crop. So I want you to take some time to really think about that. Just a quick personal story. About 10 years ago, I would always ask the question, why insurance? There's nothing sexy about insurance, right? I don't think anybody ever wakes up and goes, I want to sell a policy today. So I would always ask that question. And I remember, and I know we have an insurance person in the room, so you can relate, right? And so, but I remember on a Saturday, I was cleaning out my emails, and I came across this email that said, do you have a compelling story in your industry? And so I stopped and I took the time to think about this compelling story. And I began to type the story, and Amarillo Country Club at the time was my client. And I had sat with the marketing director, and she just cried when I met with her that her husband had had a transplant. You know, he was facing some serious health issues, transplant related. She cried, I helped her, let her know we had some guarantee issue coverages, long story, submitted the story, and I sat there and went, this is an amazing story. Like, this is what I get to do, right? Another one of those God moments. Well, lo and behold, my story, I get a phone call, and the guy on the other end said, Helen, this is Brian Anderson from Life Foundations, and I just want to let you know you're one of the 5 finalists. And I'm going, what? Is this a sales call? And I have salespeople, so I was really nice. And so he said, no, you wrote a story about a client, and I guess you didn't read the small print, right? We're partnered with Newsweek magazine. And so I was headed to New York, and so he said, just go on your trip. When you come back, we'll give you a call. Well, I got back, he gave me a call. My story actually won globally. And so my story was featured in the Newsweek magazine. They flew me and my client to Seattle, Washington, where I was a keynote speaker in front of 10,000 insurance and financial advisors. And there's a point to my story. Had I not taken the time to really think about where I was and be intentional, and the opportunities that I have to impact people, the people that get on my nerves, the people that I sometimes don't want to see, then that moment would not have happened. Does that make sense? So it was a reminder that I've got to do it intentionally. I've got to be more intentional, not just in my day-to-day work, but with my relationships. You know, becoming a better listener, identifying the needs of the people that I get to serve on a day-to-day basis. And so I began to look at my career more as a ministry opportunity. And it made all the difference in the world to me. And so I would encourage you to do the same. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the approachability principle. This is being at ease with ourselves, with who we are, being comfortable with who we are, embracing our flaws. Because most of the time, people don't see your flaws. You know, we're so hard on ourselves. So, and then the 101% principle says we've got to find common ground. How do we find common ground with people? By asking questions. And then it also sends a message of I really care about you. I really care about you. Which in turn builds a rapport, which can develop into a friendship and a great relationship. So those are the 3 that I absolutely love. And I'm just going to talk quickly because I know my time is near, not expired. But Today Matters is a phenomenal book. I've actually donated about 6 of John's books, and some of them are signed. So yeah, but I hope everybody gets the book if you don't win it today. Everybody wants to have a good day, but not many people know what a good day looks like. At the end of the day, do we really think about what the day looked like? And so the premise of this book is that you can't really worry too much about the past because we tend to exaggerate successes and failures. So begin to look at success through a different lens. Begin to look at your day through a different lens. And identify the greatness that you are and the greatness that you can bring to wherever it is that you are in your life. And I promise you, you will have a different perspective. So I just want to go over quickly the what I call the daily dozen. We talked about attitude. Attitude is the first one. It's maintaining a positive attitude all the time, regardless. Priorities. How many of us really think about our priorities and waste a lot of our day? So priorities is the top of the list. improving our eating choices, making better choices. There's a reason why when you're on a plane and they say, put your mask on first, you've got to take care of you first. And I think this is an area where we tend to put others ahead of us, including our children and our spouses. Family can easily end up at the bottom of the list. So it is critical that you pay attention. Have an awareness of your family. Thinking. This for me is number one, because everything starts with our thoughts. Thinking. Spend at least 1 hour each day in reflection. Ideally, you should be away from the daily hustle and bustle. Commitment. Ensure that any promises you have made are being acted upon. The Bible says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. So I tend to write everything down and then cross it out when it's done. Commitment. Finances. Be wise with every expenditure. And I'll be the first to say that as a business owner, we make some mistakes. A lot of times we tend to act on our feelings, on our emotions. Hence the reason why the thinking is so critical. Am I making the right decisions? Faith. Revisit and strengthen your belief system, which I call your BS, your belief system. Because everything goes back to what we believe, too. You know, is it stinking thinking? Most of the time it's going to be stinking thinking. So, relationships. Life is about relationships. So make sure you have a relationship management system. And you can begin by reading some of the books that are going to help you understand why people operate the way they do. You guys have heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. That is so true. It is so true. That's the principle of pain. Generosity. Spend time each day thinking and giving thanks. One of the reasons I give first fruits of my day to God is because I know that that's going to determine the rest of my day and how that's going to play out. So for me, that is extremely, extremely critical. Values. Review your core values. And make sure that your daily activities are in alignment. Sometimes we just go, and we don't take the time to evaluate our core values to see if there's been some changes and some shifts, which is absolutely okay. Okay. And then the last one is growth. Find ways to learn each day. I always say leaders are readers. You absolutely have to have a personal development plan. There are so many resources out there. Again, today we're going to have about 10 giveaways, and we've got some pretty amazing books. So that, in a nutshell, is what I have for you today. Just want to end by saying, Dave Ramsey talks about this principle of live like no one else, so that later you can live like no one else. I love that quote. Jim Rohn talks about how a few simple disciplines practiced daily lead to a great success, and that it's not what you get in life that makes you successful, it's what you become in life that makes you successful. So each of you matters, and your contributions are extremely important to society, so make sure that you become the best version of yourself. Thank you so much for your time.
So we do have about 5 minutes for questions. Does anybody have any questions? Don't be shy.
Oh, yeah, sure. You have a question? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
thank you, and you're welcome. And thank you for being able to articulate who you are in such a way that is so powerful for everyone in this room. We can all relate. But I'd like to know how it is that we can connect with the John Maxwell team, because if I'm looking at this correctly, there are probably women in this room that have the skills to do just what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So I'm interested in being able to do that. I'm interested in being able to connect. I guess everyone in the room that by now knows that I am a woman of faith. yourself to be a woman of faith. There's a principle, there are principles that work for everyone. And one of the things that you kind of mentioned that I figured out in my own head in a different way is that when we're in the marketplace,
Yes.
we are absolutely doing ministry.
Yes.
As a CEO, I don't care if you're a CEO, a CFO, or a UFO.
That's right.
When we connect with people and we are pouring into other people,
Yes.
you become that person's pastor. So viewing your business as ministry and not always looking for someone else to give you something to make you succeed,
Yes.
but turn it around. You want to see them succeed, and I promise you, that when you look at people as someone that you can help succeed, or in a way that you are shepherding them, you know, you are guiding them as their employer, there is no way you lose.
Amen.
There is no way. And that's exactly what I'm hearing. I heard a couple of key things when you mentioned marketplace and you mentioned, you know, being able to pour into others and have others succeed. That's really why we're all here today. Because we want to see each other succeed, and not just succeed and exist, be okay. But I want you to succeed and be glad about it.
That's right.
Be glad about it, and not ashamed or shy to tell someone else about it. So just thank you so very much for what you
No,
shared.
it's my pleasure because I know the struggles of being a business owner. I know that the collaborations is something that I have, that's been extremely critical, especially recently. I just got back from a John Maxwell conference. It's the power of proximity. It's the power of proximity. You know, John has a law called the law of significance. Like, I can do great things, but I can do even greater things with you. You know, because it's a powerful force. And that's exactly what we are. So understand that you're where you are, and you can absolutely be a person of value. Absolutely be a person of value. And that's going to come back tenfold, if not 100-fold. And you just know it. So, you know, I always share the story, the Newsweek story, because at the time in my life, I was in a season where I was tired. You're pushing policies, you're doing claims, there's a lot of admin, there's a lot of, and I kept saying, what is this? Am I really supposed to be here? So I just felt that God showed me in a snapshot of, this is the end result. So when I flew to San Francisco, spoke in front of all these financial advisors and insurance professionals, I was then asked to be their keynote speaker for State Farm, for Farm Bureau, for farmers. And so the doors opened up wide open, and I thought, oh my gosh. So I believe that God doesn't show us everything because we would get freaked out, right? He allowed me not to see the small print, or I would have said, what would I have said? Oh, I never win contest. I'm no good at that, and went on to the next thing. So that's the reason that we don't get to see all of it, but we have to have a big picture view from an entrepreneurship mindset, and realize that the people that we're impacting, they absolutely need us. And there's a universal law, the law of attraction. It comes back. And you absolutely know. That's why you've got to constantly have your, what I call your spiritual goggles on. Because the very thing that you're praying for may be the answer right there in front of you. We just didn't have our own agenda. And so absolutely where you are is in the mystery. Thank you so much. And then I'll get with you and show you. If anybody is interested in the John Maxwell, give me your information. I will have somebody contact you directly. And it's just a simple question. So we're going to ask you what your strengths are, what you do, and how we can benefit where you are. They're not trying to sell you anything, which I absolutely love. So very good question. Thank you so much.